Welcome back to another episode of the Armchair Attorney Podcast. I'm your host, real-life lawyer and adjunct law professor at Michigan State University College of Law and the managing partner of the Armchair Attorney Law Firm, serving clients all across the United States. But I'm an Illinois licensed attorney. Don't take legal advice from a podcast. That's something I should always, lead with. If you think you need a lawyer, you probably do. It's not me. Unless you're paying me, then yes, maybe. In fact, I am your lawyer. I am so excited for today's conversation. I have been following Jordan Graft for a minute. I suspect many of you have as well. They've been in the news. Apparently, there's a problem with fraud and cargo theft. According to the Transportation Intermediaries Association, that problem is nearly $35 billion. That's billion with a B. And there are companies all across the country trying to fight it, trying to fight the fraud and build more trusted exchanges. That's what we'll talk about with Jordan Graft here in just a moment. But let's do a quick recap. We've been following some cases, ladies and gentlemen. You're aware of them. I write about them. I scream about them on the internet. One of my favorite pastimes. We know that IEEPA, the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977, is headed to the Supreme Court of the United States. Yes, that's right. The VOS selections case is headed to the Supreme Court. It is without a doubt the most interesting and important case in my lifetime, probably in yours too. I'm only 40, or I am 40 for you younger people. I'm ancient, halfway to 80, 1/3 the way to 120. It's a numbers game, and the numbers keep going up. I just got back from my wonderful time at the Intermodal Association of North America, IANA. Had a chance to moderate a phenomenal conversation with some incredible people. We'll talk about that more in the upcoming weeks and months. But what I really want to emphasize to all of you is just how exciting it is to get to go off, meet people in person, and talk about this industry that all of us love. Next week, I'll be at the Journal of Commerce Inland Distribution Conference doing an AMA. Ask Me Anything. September 29th, 10:05 a.m. in the River North Hotel of the Westin, downtown Chicago. Hope to see you there. If I do, that would be great. I'd love to meet you. And that's about all the real big updates. We'll talk more about Pink Cheetah next week. You all know about broker transparency. And of course, our favorite topic, broker liability. Lots to catch up on there. Now, this podcast would not happen if it wasn't for the support of my friends at DAT. Dial a truck since 1978. DAT has been helping brokers and motor carriers discover more loads. Moving freight is never easy, even under the best circumstances. And so it's great to have a partner like DAT helping me out get the message to all of you folks. And they have been on a tear. Lots of acquisitions, lots of interesting things. And of course, my friends over at Genlogs, Ryan Joyce. Did you know that the movie Top Gun was based off of Ryan Joyce's father? I didn't know that. I saw a little podcast and I learned all about it. That's incredible. If you don't know anything about Genlogs, I urge you to go to their website, genlogs.io, and get a look at the demo. See what they're doing, discovering freight, fraud, intelligence, a new standard of care. It's cameras. It's cameras. All right. I think we've about covered all the major things we had to cover. Now we get ready for the big show. I am so excited to welcome my friend and soon to be your friend, Mr. Jordan Graft, founder and CEO of Highway. Jordan, how are you?
Hey, Matthew, how are you? I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I'm living La Vida Loca, my friend. I have watched you from afar, and now I'm watching you here. For those who don't know you, and there should maybe be one or two, maybe, who are you and what do you do?
Oh man, I'm just a redneck from Western Oklahoma. Man, I'm not that special, man. You're pumping this up pretty good. I hope people aren't disappointed by what they get here. Yeah.
Anybody who's trying to tackle organized crime is a friend of mine, and I think that's one of the things that I find so inspiring about you and what you've built at Highway. But how in the world did you get started in the business of moving freight across the country?
Yeah, I mean, my background's in banking and software development. And then my brother hired me at Triumph to run this new product they had at the time. It's called Triumph Pay. And he gave me a really inspirational speech when he gave me the offer. He said, "Look, I only got a couple people using it. You can't break it. You're not going to screw anything up. Just come see what you can do." I mean, that was the inspiration speech that I got. But really, it was a great experience. Got to fly all over this country, meet brokers, and that's where I became aware of through processing payments for brokers. Became aware of the fraud and the pain they were dealing with, mainly because we saw it in the reversals, the request for pulling money back from carrier fraudulent entities that were acting as carriers, and so through that, got to know the broker freight industry, and then saw this pain point that they had where these criminals who were pretending to be carriers were getting in their network and doing bad things. And so it drew me to look at what's happening on the front of the network. How are they even getting into the carrier network of a broker at all? And what we found as we looked at that was that there was really no network security. They had an online form for onboarding, and there were some internal rules, and they would look at some screens to kind of check carriers. And we really wanted to bring network security principles to their carrier network. So we took the principles of network security, authentication, authorization, capability management, and applied it in the domain-specific context of a freight broker's carrier network. So that's where it came from.
It's a fascinating question because, as you go back in time, brokers I would say they're relatively new. And they're then around for 30, 40 years in some iteration, but about 5% or 6% of freight 20 years ago was moved by brokers. Now it's like 20, 25%. So a lot more is going through the brokers. And for those of the folks who are listening that are not from supply chain, these big enterprise shippers, their payment terms tend to be net 90, net 120. And so the factoring companies provide this really liquidity. It's a cash flow business. So they provide this great service for both brokers who are having to become mini banks for their customers, or for the motor carrier who is paying for fuel every day, but they're not able to get paid every day. So you see this one problem the motor carrier is dealing with and the broker is dealing with, and that's what Triumph was solving. But as you get out there, how did you start kind of stumbling upon what has looked at this multi-billion-dollar problem of fraud and cargo theft?
Yeah, well, the first was just through the friends that we had in the industry. There are brokers that we're very close with that we've gotten to know through time, and so they just they got through conversation with them, just started to talk about the problems they were seeing back then, which was really double brokering and fictitious phantom carriers, right? So then it really shifted into strategic cargo theft more heavily. Like, it was always there, but then it really took off post-COVID, and that was where we saw there's just a gap. The broker, you said, the broker freight industry is relatively new. It's 30 to 40 years old compared to banking. Banking
right.
is 800 years old, right? Back to the word bank, it comes from banco, the bench in Italy, where they would sit out and the merchants would sit out and make loans. It's very old. The people have been trying to rip off banks for a very, very, very long time. And so banking is very developed in its process and controls and compliance of how they onboard customers through a know your customer KYC process. And so just having experienced that when I was at JP Morgan, we'd onboard a $500 million company, and then we would put them through the ringer through the KYC process, right? And so then you come look at what we were doing in broker freight. It's the tension you have, Matthew, is between you need to onboard carriers in seconds. You need to, because it's so transactional of a business, but you're putting hundreds of thousands of dollars of cargo value on this truck with someone you've never met in a moment of urgency, and it's just a breeding ground for fraudulent activity.
It's incredible because, I've been in the supply chain myself for 15 years as an attorney, and my world is always asset-based motor carriers. I think P&G knows who Hunt is. I think that they know who Schneider is. I think Unilever gets along just fine with Knight-Swift. But there's this massive amount of freight, and just for those who are listening, this is $1 trillion a year domestic industry of moving freight across this country. And if you're a broker and you're relying solely on the FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, you're just looking at their website, and that's how you validate whether you should work with somebody, you're going to get in big trouble.
Yeah.
So as we've watched this thing increase, what's your view of like how you complement or how you help differentiate yourself versus like the federal system has all this information, but it doesn't seem to be accurate. There's not a lot of inspections. Like, what is the gaps the FMCSA has, and how do you fill those gaps?
Well, just what you just said. So what is the name of it? FMCSA, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. John, they were designed, they were mandated for motor carrier safety, not motor carrier fraud prevention, not motor carrier, should I hire this carrier, right? Like they were designed to help make the roads safer, and they do a ton of work around road safety, and like it has nothing to do with strategic cargo theft. And so, we're talking about, round peg, square hole. This isn't what they were designed to do. And trying to manifest a process off of safety data is not the ultimate answer. And so how highway complements is we think about the world, there's two kinds of people. There's people and bad people. There's real motor carriers and people pretending to be motor carriers. And so how we separate the two is we look at footprints. And so we say this concept of, if you're trying to conduct criminal activity, you don't want anyone to know who you are. You don't want anyone to be able to see where you are, what you're doing. You want to try and obfuscate your identity and hide your footprints. And so that's how we separate the real carriers from people pretending to be carriers. Is we say, hey, show us that you're real. Whether it's the IDV process, the driver's license verification process, through insurance and how we look at insurance and how we think about all the insurance data that we process, or the physical presence through electronic logging devices. I mean, we're looking at all these different attributes of an entity to determine are you real or not, and that helps us separate the sheep from the wolves and the real carriers from people pretending to be carriers. And it's not, we don't charge carriers to do it. We're not in the business of trying to. Carriers got enough people in their pockets. Like we don't need one more person trying to ask them for money. And so for the good carriers, like the carriers that the carriers that are real, that do participate in the process and do provide transparency, there's great outcomes available for them. There's brokers are more and more pushing, more and more brokers using highway, more and more brokers pushing that to start the relationship. Like you're not talking about a carrier that you've been working with for 15 years. Talking about a carrier that you got a phone call in off a public load board posting. That requires a more level of transparency in 2025 than it did in 2015. It just requires that level of transparency to engage.
I think it's a fascinating thing because, like, the problems, as you kind of outlined, the problems in the industry aren't new. Like this, none of this stuff is new. There's new technologies that make the way you solve them different. So one of the things that wasn't the case 20 years ago was that you didn't have electronic logging devices in every truck on the road. And now that so many motor carriers have to have a device inside the machine that tracks hours of service and a variety of other things, you have more ways to validate who someone is and who they purport to be. So how is as regulation like ELD mandate comes in, how is that like influence what highway does in terms of how do we know you are who you say you are?
Yeah, I mean, so we want to separate government requirement from business requirements. So the government requires certain things of corporations, whether they're a trucking company or an airline or a bank, a restaurant, or whatever they may be. The government has requirements they set that are some baseline. And for trucking companies, there is the ELD mandate. The business requirements that a business decides to work with another business, a broker decides to work with a carrier, are different and generally higher, right? They're generally a higher requirement than what the government requires. And that's the concept that we want to coach people on that are struggling with. Well, why would this broker work with me? I have an MC number and an ELD device. Well, that's great. That's not enough. That's and businesses get to make their own requirements in the U.S. freely on how they decide on whom they work with and how they work with them. And so they may choose not to work with you altogether because of maybe a cargo insurance or issue or whatever it may be. They have the freedom to choose, and they may choose to work with you, but maybe not give you their best rate until they get to know you better and build a relationship and a track record. And so I think it was important to understand the distinction between a government requirement and a business requirement. So the government requiring the ELD mandate in 2018 was definitely a watershed moment in the industry, and it's still, I don't think, clear to most people. When you look at the data, whether it was the tariffs or the ELD mandate that caused the massive spike in rates in rate per mile in 2018. I think it's a combination of both, but we had a bunch of tariffs roll out in the last 12 months or last 6 months and we didn't see the same rate spike. So maybe it was the ELD mandate more pulling capacity out of the market, which is good for carriers, right? And for carriers have less competition, less capacity. Whether it's, we talk about capacity, we talk about like total hours, total available hours, total drivable hours. If we pull capacity out of the market, it's good for the carrier participants because there's less competition and they get rates that go up. And so ELD mandate, I know has a lot of hair on it for a lot of people, but the business requirement that I have to have visibility to your telematics is something that, Highway was one of the first companies to bring to bear, but it's not going away. And we were the manifestation of it, but it was coming whether we did it or not. And it's here now.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in trends and forces shape history. So we can say, maybe this human being or this particular decision is what changed everything. But reality is this was the direction it was going to go. Everything is connected. We're being surveilled by our telephones every day. It's we're used to technology being kind of inextricably linked to our lives. And I think it's fascinating because when ELD mandate came out, like you mentioned, it was about safety. It's we're going to try and make hours of service and drivers be safer. And you look at the data shows that drivers started to do more speeding infractions because they had less hours, so they're driving faster. So the question did it make things safer? That's a debatable question. But what it did certainly do was connect the supply chain better. And so you come into starting Highway. What was the genesis? How did you go okay, I'm going to make this company and I have an idea. What was the beginning of that journey was like for you?
So when I was a software developer, we'd ask, people would hire us to build sites for them. We used to run an agency, Brittany and I, and we'd always tell them, do not do email password. You sign in with Facebook, sign in with Google. Do not make people create a new email password for your new little
single sign-up
widget website. Make it or else they're not going to do it because email passwords email password is the worst thing in the world.
I just give my blood to the machine and it lets me in. That's what I do. Biometric information.
It's coming, but that's a whole nother conversation. But passwords are the worst thing in the world. I hate passwords. Hate them with a passion. There's literally no password column in our users table. I can't do it. I won't do it. So anyways, my point is we would coach new founders don't try and get people to create a new email password. Let them single sign on. And so Highway, my original vision was this, okay. So stepping back, why is that better? It's better because it's more secure and a better user experience. It's more secure because Google and Facebook are much better at managing people's passwords than new website being built for 15 minutes, right? And then number two, it's better because the user experience is faster and more seamless. Once you're logged in, you're signing in with Google, signing with Facebook, you're signing in with Highway into new brokers, and it's just a better experience. And
that's
so
interesting.
That was the original spirit of it. Was these carriers are trying to move into these networks of these brokers, and they're filling out repetitive information over and over again, and it just doesn't make sense. And
I just forgot password every time, Jordan. Every time I forgot it, we'll just start from scratch.
Yeah, please no. You're you are the user that every developer hates because you do the things that we like. You set a limit, people can only reset their password 8 times, and you're the guy that hits that limit and complains.
Yeah, can you redo this for me? I'm having issues. Oh, I am the worst. I appreciate that. I think as we talked before we start recording, lawyers are the worst people to deal with. We are absolutely awful, but we can talk about that later. Okay, so you get this idea, single sign-on. You have this idea of having people get better access to brokerages. Did you ever expect it would grow at the speed that it's grown?
Oh, no, absolutely not. God has been immeasurably blessed us. God has blessed us so much, and we, are so fortunate to have been where we were and to be there to help our freight broker friends and customers prevent fraud, from getting into their networks. But no, this is, we are stewards of a blessing that has been given to us.
God is good, my friend. That is amazing. I think we're only here but for that, and everything happens exactly the way that it's supposed to happen, and we get excited about the bad and the good because that's all a blessing as it kind of unfolds in front of us. Now let's fast forward to today. You guys are, in my opinion, inextricably linked now with so many major freight brokers. I don't know of any big brokers that are not working with you in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
So you've clearly fit that product market fit. You figured out this thing, and you had this capital raise. Can you talk a little bit what was that like? What was that process like? Have you done those before? What was your experience like in that?
Yeah, I mean, my background, I worked in investment banking and private equity, so I'd done it from the other side and never done it from this side. I mean, we raised an initial round when we got started, but that was mainly from friends and family and beta customers. This is the first time to like do a marketed round. And the reason we did it is, number one, like we had initial shareholders that bet on Highway, and we wanted to get them a return because they had taken a capital risk, and we wanted to get them a capital return. Number two, we needed the next leg of Highway requires much more torque, right? So there's a different, companies started. I got this from a guy named Eric Barr, who is the chief revenue officer at Triumph. He talks about startups having agility and large companies having torque. And there's this natural transition when you move from agility to torque, and I could feel that at Highway, where we were, we've been so, you were so agile, so fast, and moving and changing really quickly. And then you wake up one day and 1,100 brokers are depending on you to manage their compliance for all their carriers. And like, you can't screw that up. And that's when you need torque. That's when you need like systems and processes. And so we were like, we need, I hadn't done that. Like I'd started things, but I hadn't got to the point where like I had the experience to know how to like build, to go from agility to torque, to go from startup to like established. And so I was like, we need a partner that knows how to do this. And so we ran a process, and FTV was just, they just have so much experience. They know our industry. They do lean staffing and Fleet One, and they just bring this team of experts that they have in their expert networks that they have. We've talked to two of them today. Our team has just like about two completely off the wall different topics, right? One was about infrastructure hosting, and the other is about how do we hire a general counsel. And so like you just have a range. They have a range. FTV just has a range of experts and skills that we can tap into to help us answer questions that we need as we're changing dramatically. And then there's just the capital to like go after a bigger, with Trusted Freight Exchange and what we're launching there. We just needed the capital, like go after it, take a bigger swing, and make sure that we had the right people in the right seats to support that, to have the torque to finish the race on these things that we're doing.
So let's turn to that pathway of the new product, the Trusted Freight Exchange that you guys have been talking about on social media. I want to kind of dig into that. So what you've done so far is you've built out a company that is like the gold standard for vetting and monitoring motor carrier compliance, insurance, onboarding, all these things. And this is someone who can perform the work that you need to perform. But now this exchange, what does this bring to the existing customers, and what for new customers, or new prospects, what should they think about this product launch?
Yeah, I have been obsessed with the idea of the Buttonwood Agreement for like 6 years, 7 years. So the Buttonwood Agreement was signed in 1792 between financial partners in New York City, and they did the Buttonwood tree, and that's why it's called Buttonwood. I don't know what a Buttonwood tree is. I've looked it up over these. Anyways,
I'm learning this after we're done. I'm going to be researching this, but please go on.
1792, Buttonwood Agreement, that became the New York Stock Exchange. That is the foundation of what became the New York Stock Exchange. And as these partners coming together and saying, hey, like there's so much fraud, volatility, pricing volatility, and financial instability of counterparties that is happening in our world in financial intermediaries, where they were trading stock and security, stocks and bonds. And so they were like, we need rules and standards for how we're going to engage with one another to bring pricing stability, financial stability of partners, of our counterparties, and reduce fraud. Literally, the problem, it doesn't change. There's nothing new under the sun, as Solomon said. Like it's all the same problem, right? And so it's just obsessed me. I've been obsessed with it for so long because I've gotten to know this freight brokerage industry. Is this what they need? Like they're financial intermediaries back then, and it's freight intermediaries today, and they literally, it's in the name of the association, the Transportation Intermediaries Association.
That's right.
And they need an exchange where they can come with rules and standards for both sides. And we'll talk about the benefits we'll talk about the benefits for carriers. The benefits for carriers in this exchange is like there are rules and standards for brokers for how they post freight in the Trusted Freight Exchange. And rules and standards, you may not like them all the time, but what they bring is they bring clarity and efficiency.
That's right.
So when you're looking at something in TFX, what you can expect, that you arrive at the expectation that it's following the rules and standards. And it's our job as TFX to make sure rules and standards are being followed so that you can operate your business more efficiently. So carrier, when you click on that load, it's a real load. And you're not chasing your tail and some broker got some can't get load that they posted 35 times to get you to call them. Like, it's not that. It's a real load that you can go get.
I love your emphasis on rules and standards. And we talked briefly in the beginning of this conversation about the FMCSA and their mandate on safety. And for the folks, I will always bring this topic up when I get a chance to jump on the little soapbox that I have. But there's 1 in 5 commercial vehicles, if you stop them and inspected them right now, would be out of service, could not operate. That is the national out of service rate. That is average. Average is 80% of vehicles on the road are fine. And about 20%, maybe 22% are unsafe at any speed. And so if we can't rely on the government, the FMCSA, to keep the motor carriers compliant on safety, what would they be able to do on validating motor carriers in terms of their operational capabilities? So you saw this problem. You said, okay, we already have the connectivity to the motor carriers for the vetting processes. We have the brokers. They're all using us now. The next value we can unlock for them is this trusted network of providers. Is that kind of how it evolved?
Both sides, and the other way around for carriers too.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, yeah, for brokers looking at carriers, like we bring these rules and standards. We also apply their rules and standards. But like for carriers looking at brokers as well, like we want carriers to have the confidence that what they see in TFX is a real broker who's going to pay them. And they shouldn't have to worry about that. Right? That shouldn't be their problem. That's not their problem. They got enough things to worry about with their equipment and their drivers and fuel price, fuel and the rates that they shouldn't worry about. When they look at that load in TFX, they know it's a real broker. They're going to get paid. They're not going to get ripped off.
It's interesting because I think like for a motor carrier, I mean, let's talk a smaller motor carriers, like the 1 to 6 trucks or maybe 6 to 10 truck fleets. They're not necessarily known as being technology forward thinking. They're more like I don't want to do this. It's more steps. But to the other point we talked about earlier is that what drives rates up? And there's 2 ways you do it. One is there's a bigger demand. So people are buying more stuff. We need to have more. We saw that at COVID. People just needed more things. And then the other pathway is you have less capacity. There's less trucks on the road. There's less people operating. And so if you build up things to make it more rigorous, more rules and standards, there is going to be some capacity that is not going to be able to participate. And that is going to ultimately drive rates up. So I do look at this and go, okay, I see where this goes. So if I'm a motor carrier, what should I be thinking about this new exchange? Like, is this a place that I should be going to daily to try to find and discover freight? Or how would you view that as a motor carrier?
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's free to qualify motor carriers that pass the qualifications. It's listed in TFX. They can go look and see what the qualifications are to get to see freight. Just because you have an MC number and a credit card doesn't mean you get to see freight. Like that, it takes more than that. We don't want your money, but we want your transparency. We want to know who you are before we share something really important, which is our customers' freight with you. But absolutely, and free. And go search and go spend time with it. And you're going to find opportunities you don't find anywhere else. And you're going to find real opportunities. And the carriers that we talk to about the feedback thus far is like, it's the most real experience they've had. And that's important to us. We want carriers to have a great experience. And I use the term very specifically, like carriers and people pretending to be carriers. And
yeah,
so
exactly.
Carriers are allowed. People pretending to be carriers, people trying to masquerade as a trucking company will not have access. And that's the difference. And I don't know on the price thing. I don't know. Rates are it's a semi-commodity market. It's what makes it such an interesting market is its components of service and commodity, right? It's like it's not a pure commodity that can be traded. It's homogenous. There is a service component to it, and so how this impacts rates, I don't have a view on that, and I wouldn't say like that is in any way anything we think about in that regard. But what is important, I think, is you think about like why this hasn't been done before. It's because it's really hard. Right? The underlying transaction, when you look at any business to business, any industry that has an intermediary between a B2B transaction, you look at how much of it's moved into a digital ecosystem. Right? Travel agents were the first to go. Right? First to go to an online experience, the Expedia and Orbitz, and those became marketplaces and exchanges, and they got rid of the intermediaries. Different than what we're talking about here. The reason they were able to do that is because the underlying transaction is very homogenous. is an airline, is seen in an airline, is a human being in an airline. And so the rules and standards they had to have were very light, right? It wasn't actually, there really weren't rules and standards. It was a credit card or do you have a driver's license? That was it, right? When we talk about here in over-the-road truckload, it's very, very, very different, right? Intermediaries play a critical role in the transaction. That's very different than what a travel agent is doing. And so we're actually, as an exchange, we're empowering the intermediaries and helping them find providers. They're also helping the providers find great intermediaries to work with, find the right intermediaries they want to work with. And it's different. There's the fragmentation of the underlying transaction, the fragmentation of the underlying service provider base that makes what we do here as an exchange very different than what Orbitz and Expedia did as marketplaces, and how we help the intermediaries and service providers connect.
Well, I think it goes back to your initial conversation about single sign-on. If I'm a broker and I'm using your technology to validate that this motor carrier is available in this area and can do this work for me, wouldn't it be great if I could assign the load within the same platform? Is that the same kind of user experience? Is like you can in a single pane of glass, you can get from the freight coming to you to discovering the motor carrier, tendering it to them, and then getting it delivered, and know it's all in the same ecosystem?
Kind of, but I'm going to tweak a little bit what you said. Is like, no one wants one app to rule them all. Like we don't,
Of course.
we don't want one app to rule them all. And so the point of Highway from the beginning was we don't want one app to rule them all. But if we're not going to have that, then we got to make it as easy as possible to get from TFX to JB Hunt 360, from TFX to Schneider Freight Power, from TFX to CH Robinson Carrier Experience. Like we have to make it as seamless as possible. And the whole point of starting with single sign-on and identity and the whole rules engine was so that when that moment, that magical moment happens, when a carrier is looking at a load, wants to go book it in JB Hunt 360, that there's nothing blocking them. There's no barrier. They're immediately moving into JB Hunt's digital experience and booking it there, which is what JB Hunt wants, which is what the brokers want, which is what the carriers want. Yeah. The carriers want to be in that digital experience. And so the whole point of why we started with single sign-on was for this moment. And like the first time it happened, I was like so excited. I was yelling and screaming. And like the guys who've been with me since the beginning got it. And the new product guys were like, why is this such a big deal? I was like, this is the culmination of the entire vision in this moment that they can flow seamlessly.
I love this because like in a past life, I was in the maintenance and repair industry, and I used TMT, which is a Trimble product for managing my shops. And I'd have to invoice, and I'd do it through TMT. And then I'd have to take the invoice and manually rekey that into auto integrate or rekey it into JB Hunt's portal for their equipment. And everybody's got a portal. And there's never anyone who's available that could say, let me bridge the gap from your system to that system. And so you've built this thing with the idea like, you just want people to not be too miserable. Like people are going to be miserable no matter what in transportation. Like, that's the nature of our business, but at least they're not mad about having to re-enter data into some other platform.
Yeah, I don't have to log into 15 different things. The login experience is not a strategic advantage. The login experience is not. Like it's just not. You know, it's a risk. It's a risk, and it's a bad user experience. And so we just want to like have people stop logging in places.
So I have to go to the next pathways here. I would have my hat in the background. What I know about the world of brokers is that very few are able to run their business with one exchange or marketplace or board. Most of them have to have several, and there are several that are out there. Do you see what you're building as complementary to the workflows of people who might be using truck stops or might be using DATs of the world? Like, how do you view that?
I think it's complementary and competitive at the same time. Like we're not out claiming to be like God's gift to logistics, right? Or if we are, like, let me know and I will.
It's a marketing group message.
We better, we better, we need to be humble because, no, pride comes before fall. So
that's right.
Be humble. So no, we are trying to do is be the best we can, be the best product for our customers and serve our customers where they want us to serve them. This is the area where they ask us to serve them. And so we're going to go do it with the 110% effort and try and create a product that's great for them. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about like, what does it have industry consequences or, DAT is a great company and Truckstop's a great company. I know Scott Mosgrip and he's a fabulous leader and visionary. He's been doing this longer, he could probably claim that he learned a lot along the way. We all stand on the shoulders of those that came before us, right?
100%.
You're a fool to think otherwise, right? So, we all stand on the shoulders of the people that came before us. And so always want to use the tone of respect and deference, and like we just gonna go create great product, and like God is sovereign. What's gonna happen is gonna happen, and like we're just gonna do the best we can do within the context of how He's asked us to go about it, and try and be impactful.
Well, I've talked to a lot of shippers over the years, and one of the things that have been in the news and in the zeitgeist was this idea of like China plus one. Like we all utilize China for something, but we want to get other people. And maybe the messaging and this, I don't know if my friends at DAT are listening, like DAT plus one, like maybe there's other alternatives. I do think like in this environment, it's fascinating because if you're a broker, if you're a motor carrier, this is a really hard time. Like the last couple of years have been brutal. And so your investment in technology is going to be varied based on what you can afford in this market. And it's one of these things where you've launched this product in what is one of the worst freight recessions in our country's history. And yet you guys are finding adoption. You're finding your footing. How has that been the early stage? Because you're startup 2.0 now.
I started 2.0. More like 1.1. It's like a minor release. It's not a major release, right? It's like a minor, there's still major support for backward functionality. That is a nerd joke. Like people can make lawyer jokes. Like anybody's gonna make developer jokes. Like that's a bad developer joke. Okay. So we just didn't think about those things. Like, when we said, this is a problem, let's go solve it. And just like, we gave it away in the beginning. We gave it away to people. So just try it, see if it works. Tell us what we can do better. And like that's how we started. And like it wasn't, dude. It was never like, okay, there's a freight recession, don't do this. It was like, okay, our friends and people we care about have problems. Let's go solve the problem, make their life better, and then what will happen will happen. And so there was never like some grand master plan of like.
It goes like when I talk with to students, whether it's in my law classes or other places, and they want to talk about being an entrepreneur, I look back and I talk about how like my father always taught me, he's like, you run your own race. Like whatever's happening is going to happen regardless of whether you care about or work with it. Timing is important, but really it's the moment in time you have the ability to do something, you go and you do it. And the cargo theft, the fraud, this is not going away. It's only accelerating. And I do think bad markets make great companies. Like bad markets give you the opportunity to dominate a category. And so as we start like looking ahead, like where do you see this exchange going? Is this a place that you see? What do you hope to see out of this in the next year or two?
Yeah, I want to see it be a place where carriers can come and find great freight from real brokers who can pay them. And I want for brokers to be a place where they know that if it gets booked through TFX, that is good, and that it's going to get covered. It's a real carrier, and like that carrier's going to show up. Aside from maintenance issues that are uncontrollable by all parties, but like that carrier is real. It's a real carrier. It's got a truck. It's going to come pick it up. The truck's insured. The driver's insured. And we know who the driver is, like that all that, like the transparency that both sides can have so they can build trust. Trust is built through transparency. Transparency is the building block of trust. And so like that's what we believe. That's how we go about what we do at Highway. And so like we that's what I want to see come out of this, is that people know when they go there what they're going to experience, and experience is a positive one for both carriers and brokers.
Now, I'm going to go in a different direction. I want to kind of get your mind on a problem that kind of was presented to me at a conference I was at not long ago. So I spoke at the National Lease Annual Conference. They're an equipment leasing company, about a couple hundred members, over 100,000 trucks in their fleet, over 80,000 trailers. And one of the owners of one of these dealerships said, hey, we are looking for technology to verify certificate of insurance stuff. Is that a problem that you and your organization can solve? Is that something that's like in your wheelhouse?
Yeah, so we monitor COIs on 170,000, 180,000 motor carriers every day. That's what we do. That's a core component of what we do. It is a nightmare. It is. There's like, okay, insurance is the only thing I've ever experienced in my life. When I talk to someone about insurance, like someone from the insurance industry, whether it be reinsurance or MGA, or every time I talk to one of them, I walk away knowing less. I'm like, I understand. I literally have less of an understanding of what you're talking about. Between all, it is so complicated. And so I would say, Brittany in our risk team have forgotten more than I'll ever know about insurance and cargo insurance, and cargo exclusions. It's really, really difficult, and it's highly fragmented as well. It's tens of thousands of insurance agents, producing insurance for hundreds of thousands of motor carriers, and there's not, and like we like to think there's standardization. There's not. Like there's some, but like there's really not. There's so much ambiguity in some of these policies, unintentionally and intentionally done. And
well, I mean, it kind of goes back to what you said before about when your time in banking is about knowing your customer. We want to know who we're going to give all this money to. And in terms of the freight broker problem you're solving, is we're going to know who we're going to give this very valuable $100,000 or $500,000 load. We want to make sure we know who you are. I think the leasing folks have a similar problem. Like, I'm going to give you this really expensive asset, and I certainly hope that you are who you purport to be. So maybe that's we'll have a separate dialogue on that. I think that might be something.
I'll give you a referral, baby. I'll give you a referral fee on that. Katie, get pissed. I told you you get a referral fee. Yeah.
Michael's a good dude. Well, let's turn to the team. Let's turn to the team. So I've known Michael Caney for a minute. I have been so surprised every conference I go to and I see anyone from your organization, the joy that they have for what they do. So how do you as a leader go, how do I find great talent? How do you retain great talent?
Oh, there's a book by a guy named Matt Levy, a guy here in Dallas, and there's a quote in that that's always stuck with me. It's said different ways, but the leaders with few exceptions get the organizations that they deserve. And he's just saying that basically, like, how you carry yourself will be how your organization carries itself. And so, I am a redeemed believer in Jesus Christ. I'm a broken man who lived a sinful life, who was saved by an eternal Savior who has reconciled me to his Father, the God the Father. So like I do my best to live my life to emulate that behavior, and I try and surround myself with people who believe the same thing and do the same thing and treat others with humility and treat others with grace and show forgiveness to others because we were first forgiven. And so we try and create that culture here. And so the combination, we allow people to run really, really fast. We want people to run fast and break things, and much sometimes to the chagrin of our customer support. Like, we are going to break things because we're moving fast, but we're going to treat each other with humility and forgiveness. We're not going to point fingers. We are going to make sure that we are in this together. So that, I think, helps form the foundation and bedrock of what it's like to work here and why people like it, because there's a lot of freedom. There's a lot of freedom to run fast and make decisions and go hard at things, and knowing that, like, just because you make a mistake, people aren't going to jump down your throat because you made a mistake. Like, I've broken the site more than anyone. I'm involved. Like, I always tell the young guys. This is a young guy who started like a couple months ago, and I walked by. He's like, "Have you broke production yet?" And he's like, "No." I'm like, "You're not trying hard enough, man. Like, you got to go out there, shove some code out there, see if you can break it out." Our CTO loves when I do that. So no, that's not our development mandate. But I like messing with him just to give him the freedom.
That's right.
As a young guy, just be like, man, like, it's gonna be okay. You're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna break something, and it'll be okay just as long as you own the outcome.
I still think we're young guys, right? We have to admit that we're not there anymore. Is that okay? That's fair.
We're not, Coach. We're not, brother. We're not.
I love your message. Well, I love your message about Christ. Like, I rediscovered Christ for myself a couple of years ago, in my early 30s, and getting rebaptized with my family with me is one of the most beautiful moments of my entire life. And it was something that, again, it reminds you why we are here. And it is because we have failed so substantially, and there's no path to solving that but through a single passage. There's a single way. And that has been some of the most joyful and liberating stuff, to know that you are forgiven. You're able to make mistakes. It's okay. And as you kind of touched on a quote, I'm going to pull further, is that you leaders get the teams they deserve. I think we, as an industry, we get the supply chain that we deserve. We spent a lot of time making the barriers to enter pretty limited. Insurance rates are pretty low. I mean, $750,000 is the minimum. Out of service rates for vehicles are not great. I really do believe that our industry needs fundamental transformation, and that's barriers to enter that get much more rigorous. And for a lot, it will be difficult, just like the ELD mandate. It will be difficult, but it has to happen. There's no way around it, whether it's more rigorous enforcement of certain types of proficiencies, or if it's around vehicle maintenance or whatever else. So what you're doing, what you're building, is what should have been done by the government. Like there should have been something that they would say, this, we can verify these actors are all okay, but they can't. They're just unable to do that. And so you stepped in and helped solve this problem. As you look forward, as you see, okay, what is the next pathway where you see Highway able to really enter and provide value?
Oh, brother, we got a full plate right now. So you trying to staff me up, man? Like I got all. We got to go
not going to
deliver
be
all
easy.
these things. They got all these things we got to deliver on. No, I think our roadmap is pretty well defined in public at this point with what we're doing with TFX and load compliance and identity solutions. There's nothing that we're talking about public. I mean, there's ideas and things germinating, but we got to execute well. Like I mean, there's a couple cultural principles that we have at Highway. There's really four that we like document. These are the four that we repeat to ourselves to instill them in us. Own the outcome, be responsive, focus plus energy equals impact, and compete to win. And so on the third one, focus plus energy equals impact, is what you're talking about here. There's a lot of shiny things we can look at and go chase and do, but focus plus energy is what equals impact. And focus, the discipline of focus is saying no. Discipline of being strong is working out. The discipline of creating focus is we got to say no to things. And as we get bigger and need more, as we get bigger, we need more focus. We got to say no to more things, and that means, and it's so many things, right? The first is just your ability to execute and deliver. Yeah. You've got a team of finite people. Your team wakes up every day with a certain amount of calories they can burn for, and I think I'd use the term calories, not in like a physical sense, but like in a true, like productive sense of what they can do at the company. And so the more things you try and do, the more the calories get spread. And so I really like to think about, like, is this something we really want to burn calories on and spend time on? And like, the reality is we're pretty full right now. We have a pretty clear roadmap we need to go execute on and create great outcomes for our customers and their carriers. And we need to do that and do it with excellence. And if we're not doing it with excellence, we need to stop doing things and focus on these things, these fewer things.
I love that message, because when I talk with clients or people who want to start companies or people who are just at a crossroads, I like to think of it in terms of, like, if you don't think you can be one of the best at doing this, like, don't do it. Like, no one needs more mediocrity in a given thing. Like, you can keep doing what you're doing, but if you want to get in there and just be okay, like, why would you bother? Be the best at what you can do. And then when you've become the best, then you can start saying, okay, this is the next thing. We can look at inorganic growth and do some acquisitions or some acqui-hires, all this fun stuff you can have. As we get ready to wrap up, I'd love to get your kind of advice to somebody who's thinking about opening a brokerage or opening a motor carrier or opening like a company. What should they think about, whether it's positive or negative?
Okay, I think the first, let's take it neutral for a second, outside of trucking and brokers and carriers. First thing I tell someone that's about to leave their job to go start something is, are you building a service or a product? There's two very different things. So if you're building a service, you're going to go out and you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a web developer, you're going to go be a consultant, you're going to go contract your time out for, you're going to trade time for dollars. And if you're going to go do that, don't raise a bunch of money. Make sure that it's where you want to spend your time, not your dollars, but your time. Don't put a bunch of your own money to go do as thin a slice as possible to go start generating revenue. So go sell your first website, go sell your first legal client, go sell your first load. All right, go do it without putting a bunch of time, without a bunch of capital into it, both your and other people's money, because it's a service. It needs to be high margin. It needs to be profitable almost day one. You need to be paying yourself almost day one. Build it up where you're running it yourself. Like when I started Crate Buying with Brittany, she and I hustled our own. It was us and one other partner, her brother, who likes to remain nameless whenever I do these things. But anyway, he was the three of us, and we didn't hire. I mean, I think we went 6 months to a year before we hired our first non-founder employee. We were just paying ourselves, and we were doing all the work, and we were learning, we were building, and we were figuring out processes. And then finally, we got big enough where we could afford to hire one person. We stayed profitable. That business was profitable its entire life. Every month of its entire life, it was profitable because we were building. That's a service company. And so if you're going to go do that, think about the problem that way. Okay, and I use big terms like don't expect to sell that thing for $50 million. It's a service business. There have been people that built service businesses and sold them for $50 million, but there's a lot fewer of those than there are people that have built a service business up, ran it their whole life, and have made a great living and been great fathers and great mothers in their home and focused on their family and like had a great experience. You can build a great service business which will cash flow and provide for you and your family and allow you to be an owner and allow you to have a great lifestyle, but like don't raise a bunch of money from other people to go do it. Okay, so that's a service business. Product business is very different. Product business, you need capital, you need people, because you've got to go from zero to product market fit and survive. And it's really, really, really flipping hard. And there's a lot of people that have died along the way. There's a lot of like companies that have died along the way. And also don't hold it close to your identity. Because I've built products that have failed. Like if we had more time, I could go on and on. But all the products I built that failed. Like your first one's probably going to fail. There's very few, people that hit it on the first one. You're going to fail on your first product, and so like you've got to have like a different mindset that's more swinging for the fences and knowing that you're going to strike out a couple times before you hit. So to answer your question, long answer to short question, I would tell people that want to start a freight broker or truck company, it's a service business. Approach it like a service business. Don't go raise a bunch of money from other people. Don't go try and be, all things to all people. Like go figure out how you can run that service business, run it yourself, get in the truck and drive or cover the loads yourself until you build up enough to pay for yourself. And then think about going and hiring people and buying more equipment or hiring more people to cover more freight. Like do it, that was my experience running a service business. It's the only way to do it is to be to be the best widget maker. So like we would talk about like at Crate-Barn, we were the digital agency where we built software. Like we were widget makers, and so you want to be the best widget maker. So you go do it and go do it yourself and be the best and know because you're leading your team and like you want them to follow. And you look at like the trucking companies that have been tremendously successful over the years, like Werner, like JB Hunt, like Schneider, like Celadon before the guy who remained nameless came in and committed fraud and destroyed it. Like they were the best widget maker. They were the best driver. They were in the truck. They were making it happen. C.L. Werner was in the truck making it happen, right? They were driving and they were out there fighting. Like, go do that and like go build it up slowly by that way. Don't take on a bunch of debt. Don't take on a bunch of third-party capital where you got to go answer to someone else. Like, because in a service business, you're going to have ups and downs. You are going to have volatility, and you can't have a bunch of fixed capital costs, whether it's debt or equity in your structure while you're getting going. Your service business has to be very large before it can take on fixed capital costs.
When, as we wrap up, the last question I have for you before I have the final question, but this question is, when did you know you had product market fit for Highway? When did you know?
It's easier to see in the rearview mirror than in the moment. Like I think I saw it more clearly when we passed it than when we were in it. It was probably somewhere around when we hit 100,000 monitored carriers, somewhere in there. I think it's when we hit product market fit and all the metrics started to kind of flow more evenly from there, somewhere in there.
I think what I'd like to kind of phrase for the folks that are listening or watching is the most significant moments of your life, you don't even know they're the most significant until way later.
So true. So true.
I got 4 kids. I got my 12-year-old. I have my 9-year-old. I have twins that are going to be 3 in November. And there will be a day when I can't pick them all up. I still can because I'm a young man, Jordan. But there will be a day, and you never know until you're like, oh my gosh, there was this moment. It just passed me. I had no idea. That's why you have to live every moment with so much joy and gratitude, because there'll be a time you go, man, I wish I would have been a little bit more present in that moment.
Yeah. Amen, brother. Amen.
All right. So as we wrap up, where can people find more about you and where can they go to find more about Highway?
I don't need to go find out more about me. Hey, brother, ain't nothing here, man. Like I am a broken man trying to live out the gospel as best I can. If you want to find more about Highway, it's highway.com. That's the best place to go and fill out the form there, and we'll be in touch.
Well, I appreciate you, Jordan. Thank you for joining the podcast today. Stick around for a moment if you can. I really appreciate you, my friend. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Matthew.
That's it, folks. Jordan Graft, founder and CEO of Go Highway, building the best platform for figuring out who this is that I'm going to work with, finding product market fit to help solve one of the biggest challenges facing our country, which is the systemic and crazy amounts of strategic cargo theft. So much is happening. There's so much to break down in future episodes. But when you find a company that is chasing a problem that impacts everything from what the things cost on your shelf to how things safely get to where they're supposed to go, that's someone you got to follow. They've done some incredible things. We're going to link some of the news stories in the show notes. And we have to say thank you to our sponsors, as always, DAT, Dial a Truck, 1978, helping people discover more loads. They got some pretty cool stuff over at DAT. Check it out. If you're new to DAT, you can save 10% off your first year by following the little link in the show notes. And of course, my friends at Genlog, setting a new standard of care for freight intelligence. Cameras everywhere. Ryan Joyce often reminds me there are cameras always watching me, always looking, always wondering, what am I up to? And if I don't see you at the Journal of Commerce Inland Distribution Conference next week, maybe you'll see me at F3, the Future of Freight Festival, on the main stage with my good friend Craig Fuller. I will hopefully catch you next time, and thank you for tuning in, as always, to the Armchair Attorney Podcast, the only podcast that I, Matthew Leffler, the Armchair Attorney and adjunct law professor at Michigan State University College of Law, am the host of. So that is something that makes it special. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. And then the button gets pressed and it goes.